welcome. This is a 45-minute slow flow practice today, and really just kind of taking time to breathe and get into the body and sit into some shapes a little longer. So slowing it all down a little bit. So we'll just start in our comfortable or grounded seat. Might be cross-legged, you might like to prop up in any different way. Start to feel the spine and the idea of the length of the spine. Any of that little movement, closing down the eyes or softening the gaze. And just starting to really turn up and arrive into your practice by arriving into your own breath. It can seem like a strange thing to do, but the idea being that the breath becomes more of this conscious action where you're really aware of your inhalation and your exhalation. You're kind of watching that movement and noticing the comfort it can bring to simply watch and observe and be in the breath. And then seeing if you can allow your breath to be more subtle. And in this sense, like as it moves in and out through your nostrils, seeing if you can create very little movement. So there's no force, it's just this quiet kind of ease of the breath moving in and out. I always find this very calming when things can get a little overwhelmed or kind of out here, to just bring it back to the simplicity of moving in your own body and experiencing the softness of the rhythm of your breath. And we'll take just 3 full rounds of breath like this. Beautiful. And opening up your eyes when you're ready, you can always keep it soft gaze whenever you'd like. And take one hand out to the side, reach the opposite arm up. And you'll start to find length and space through the side body. And as you do this and really lengthen through this top hand, can you bring your awareness and attention to the side body and imagine you're breathing kind of into the side of your ribs or the side of the lungs here. Use that same soft intention of breath to create space and expansion in the body. Just noticing how it feels. When you lift up, drawing into the lower belly, find this kind of fluid movement to the other side. And then lengthen it. The more you can add as much length as you like by pressing that opposite hip down and really reaching through the top hand. And using the intention of expansion and space. As you try to create space through the spaces of the ribs. Yeah, and to create more breath. And then come back through center. And then just bring the hands behind you. You might interlace or just kind of reach them back. And the same thing, open and create space through the front of the body. Beautiful. And release and bring your hands down. So like you're coming into a cat pose, kind of round. Maybe you walk the hands forward, depending how you're sitting. You can let the head be heavy. And then feel like you're breathing or kind of pushing and creating space into the back of your body, into the back of the ribs. And then reaching up. Take it one more to each side. Maybe you change where your hand comes down. Notice how that changes. Or this time add a little bit of movement. And you might be opening it up and back. You might even like to reach this top hand forward and kind of explore coming forward. Or even back a little more. And just mindfully tuning into how your body is feeling, how your breath is feeling. Is there tightness and restriction, or is there a real sense of flow and ease today? And then you can make your way over to the other side. Same thing, a little bit of exploration to the side. And then back up through center this time. Let's reach the arms Either just extending out through your fingers, you might bring the arms wider, or if it's there, interlace your hands, lengthen. The hands come out in front and take a few circles through your wrists. And in the other direction. This idea of looking for more space. Space in the body, space in the mind. Let's come off of the seat or out of the seat off the props. And making your way down onto the back. So we're going to start off with a few rounds of undulating bridges and really using variations of the arms. And the idea, coordinating movement with the arms as we move the, what am I trying to say, pelvis, the spine. So start off by finding your grounded, stable position here. So where your feet feel really nice and grounded, it might be that they're distance apart underneath the knees, but kind of walk your feet around and just notice where you feel like you can press into your mat. And it feels this connection, right? So as you press into the floor, there's a connection right up through your knees and into your hips, so it's like you can ground through the hips and the lower back. So start off with just arms beside you, and then look for this tilt or movement with the pelvis. So rocking forward as I kind of roll and think about tipping the hips forward. And I lift up and create a little space into the lower back. And I'm very much overdoing that movement right now. And then draw it back the other way. So you're tipping the pelvis back and you're pressing the lower back into the floor. And you can imagine that your pelvis is like this bucket. So as I come forward, if the bucket's full of water, I'm tipping the water forward over my legs. And as I come back, I'm tipping the water backwards. And such an important movement to be really aware of in the body, to keep this articulation through the pelvis. And so starting that first, so when we are moving and lifting into bigger movements, you're initiating from your lower back and your belly, and very much from the center of the body. And you're welcome throughout all of these undulating bridges today. If this feels quite good for you, if you do have kind of tender lower back, it just needs a little bit more slow and loving attention, just staying with pelvic tilts. It's amazing how kind of therapeutic pelvic tilt movements can be if things are feeling a little out of whack for you. If you'd like to go further with the movement, you can then tilt back, press the lower back into the floor and start to lift your hips to this undulating bridge. And I highly recommend to make it more into like a journey rather than coming straight up towards the top or your highest extension. Keeping it a little lower, and then each time you move, start to lift a little bit higher. So you're keeping your focus and attention on lifting a little more and then lowering down. And even closing the eyes and noticing what parts of your body have to engage a little more as you lift higher. What do you notice? Where do you feel the sensations? And adding these layers of curiosity. So we're tuning more into the sense of interoception, cultivating internal awareness. And in times in our lives of uncertainty and unknown, it's so important that we are really cultivating this more internal sense of our intuition and our body's wisdom, to know what feels right for us, to know that we are okay and safe, just being in our own bodies and our own experience. Taking a few more rounds like this, you might keep it really low again. You don't have to lift up any higher, or you might start to lift your hips a little more. This idea of lengthening through the front chain of the body. Wonderful. And taking one more. Coming down, notice that you're still really grounding through the feet, so you're not letting the knees kind of flop out to the side, but it's this sense of integrity through the midline. And then pausing for a moment, you can close down the eyes, noticing how the back of your body feels, the connection. Can you still sense and feel your feet pressing into the floor? Taking a full round of breath, you might even like to sigh the exhale out now. And then we'll start the moving again, lifting the pelvis as high as you'd like, but this time adding the right arm. And again, an option if you prefer not. But as you lift up, you might just take the right arm straight up towards the ceiling, and that's where you go, and then come back down. Or you can lift up and reach that right arm overhead to wherever it's comfortable. It might even be that you take it out wider a little if your shoulder doesn't like it coming straight up over the head. And then lowering down. And the intention is that the hand or the arm and the hips come down at the same time, which takes a little bit of extra focus because obviously your arms got more to travel. So you've got to manage the movement and the speed of the arm and the hips. And just keep that focus with your breath and your movement. I'm staying here on the right side. And seeing if you can coordinate your breath. So it might be inhale as you lift up, exhale as you lower down. That's not enough breath. Take the full round, but seeing if you can go to pace where you could have a full breath or a full inhale up and a full exhale down. Take what feels like 3 more cycles to you. And then once you've done what feels like 3, let yourself pause for a moment. You might even let the knees just gently knock in towards center. And take this moment before you kind of rush to the next movement. Can you pause? Can you feel the sensations in your body? And notice maybe any difference between the right and left side, especially around the shoulder and the neck, the arms. Just let yourself settle and ground. You start to do this and drop into these lower places where you really bring the body into this very healing, calm space. And then as you're ready, we'll take the same thing toward the left side. So choosing, again, your variation, maybe arms straight up, maybe it comes overhead, and then all the way down. And just noticing maybe as you start to move, does it feel any different? Does your back start to kind of not like lifting up? And again, you might come back to those pelvic tilts. Does your shoulder feel different on the side? Then you might like to add any a little bend in the elbow or anything else. Be curious and creative how you can adjust the movement. I don't know the movement is wrong. It's more about modifying for what you need today and really sitting in the interestingness of it all. So you would. We'll find about 3 more on this side. Again, just when you feel like you've completed your 3rd round, pausing once again and give yourself that moment of pause. It doesn't have to be really long. But notice, can you observe the differences? Maybe do the 2 sides feel more even? They feel quite different. Okay, nice full breath. And then we'll seal it up with a few rounds of both arms. So lifting up and coming over and taking maybe about 3 to 5 rounds here. Not necessarily as many as we did with both, but just sealing it back into a more symmetrical sense in the body. Take 1 more like this. Coming all the way down. Pausing at the bottom again. This time you might like to walk the feet out, let the knees drop in a little more. Taking that moment of pause, settling, and then let's allow the knees to gently move from side to side, start to bring a little more of that twist. Notice how it feels through your back. Even slowing down here as the knees come over, can you maintain a connection to the center of the body as you drop them from side to side? And even though the movement seems really simple, doesn't allow a lot of core strength to do this, when you slow it down, you start to notice and feel everything that's happening from the center to actually lift your legs. And with more very focused attention to what you're doing, the more you actually activate and start to tone and tune into what's happening in your body. So it becomes more effective and efficient in your movement. Something simplistic. Beautiful. And then any little movement before we come up towards a tabletop. So you might just like to bring the knees in and create circles with the knees. It can be nice to circle out those ankles and bring space into the ankle joints. You might even like to lift up and come into a version of happy baby for a moment, rocking side to side. And then your option, either rolling off to one side, or if it feels good, that little rock and roll, but maintain a curvature through your back. If you're doing this to roll, checking that it feels okay. And then coming up, making your way over towards your tabletop position. And we'll just walk the tabletop towards the back of your mat. So you've got space in front as we start to bring this through a flow. And you might like to have the blanket or anything you've got underneath your knees if it gives you a little more support. Setting up that tabletop and bringing the same flow that you had with your pelvis now into your cat-cow movement. So notice where you start to move in your cat-cow, and does it feel really fluid and open into the pelvis, especially after all of those pelvic tilts and undulating bridges. And add a little more bend into the arms and kind of moving through the shoulder blades. Again, we're looking for a sense of fluidity and movement in the body. And when you can notice the areas that feel stuck, you've got something to let your intention rest on and start to allow that movement and breath into those areas. Maybe even gazing side to side. You might even like a moment to kind of reach one arm up. I really like this opening through the side. You might even like to come through for a moment. You don't have to come all the way down. Just a nice way to explore again those areas that might be holding a little tightness and inviting space in. Otherwise, staying with your cat cow as well or anything else. Beautiful. And we'll start to move through our three shapes of child's pose, tabletop, and downward facing dog. So sinking back for your child's pose, you can reach the arms out. And then ripple forward. Now, I like this somewhat wider tabletop here. You might even like a moment of cat-cow. And then tucking the toes. Keep a nice bend in the knees initially. Bring it on up to this down dog. And maybe a peeling out of the feet. And then ripple forward, so slowly lowering down. So again, you're bringing that awareness and engagement right into the center of the body. So the movement's still strong, but it's slow, right? So you're noticing, you're bringing that mindful attention to what you're doing. You might come forward for that kind of cat-cow with the pelvis or anything else. You might even sink a little further forward, tucking those toes. Downward facing dog. Let it be yours, let it be fluid. Adding on anything else that feels like a delightful creative expression for you. And just enjoying the movement in your body. You might even like to take your child's pose out to one side as you come down. And really get that beautiful length through the side body. Giving yourself that permission, right? Especially when you're at home by yourself, you can kind of do whatever you want. And a lot of times, even if you have those options in a group class, it's less likely. You know, we like to move with the group a little more, which is also a beautiful experience, but it's taking kind of home experience for the benefits that it has as well, of allowing a little bit more self-expression. A little bit more freedom in a sense, where breaking the rules is much more acceptable. We'll take 2 more rounds like this. And then a moment to settle in child's pose, with the knees out wide or knees together. And you can keep your arms reaching out, or you might like to walk your hands in towards each other. Bring your palms together, bending your elbows, and then take the thumbs back to the nape of the neck. Just for 2 full breaths. Get your attention of breath, if you can, be right into your back body again. So expanding or noticing, can you create space in the back of the ribs and behind the shoulder blades as you breathe, filling up. Maybe it's hard to breathe in, maybe you can't notice it. That's also something to notice. Beautiful. And then reaching the arms, let's walk the hands in, we'll sit up on the heels for a moment. I'm going to come forward for a low lunge. So if you're like me and you're on quite a hard floor, you might like a blanket or a support for the knees, okay? And if you do have blocks or anything you use as blocks, you know that you like this for lizard lunge type shape, you might like to have the blocks as well. Or anything you're working with. Very much an option, you don't actually need any of them, but I'll be using them. And then we'll come into tabletop. And instead of our down dog to sit up. So I'm going to take a few steps forward before we actually pause here. So in my tabletop, I'm going to bring the right hand in more towards the center line. And then lifting that right leg, step your right foot, the outside of your right hand. And then just sink forward for a moment, and you might take a little movement, bending forward and then easing back. Noticing. And then pressing down through your hands, see how lightly you can lift that right leg and take it back. Yep. Moment forward and back, and we'll do that again. So lifting the right, step forward. Maybe you notice there's a little more space. You can step forward even past the right hand. You can adjust the hands if you like to come forward as well. And then that movement, forward and back. And then let's step it back as light as you can. Look for that control. How much awareness can you bring into these subtle movements? So we'll take it one more time forward, and we're going to actually step into our lunge. You might bring the hands in a little more. Step to the outside, and then adjust. So if you don't quite make it when you're doing that now, you use your time to wriggle it forward. Adjust your back knee. And then, no, actually we'll stay here. So if you're coming into lizard lunge and you use your props, you can bring them to the inside line of your right leg. And you might come down onto those elbows, or you can come elbows to the floor. If coming down any further just does not work for you, it's not feeling super open at all, then just stay up on your hands. And sinking down, and maybe a little movement. I kind of like to get the rocking side to side, forward and back, especially if it does feel pretty tight and kind of stuck in your body. Adding a little bit of movement, it's generally going to help just create that space. You don't get stuck and start to create these rigid, stiff patterns. Always holding here in our lizard lunge. Let's take 3 more breaths here. Beautiful. After your 3rd exhalation, coming up onto that left hand, you can take blocks out to the side if you were using them, and we'll open up for a twist. Yep. Now, staying right here if this is where you want to be. If there's space, and I cannot emphasize that enough, if there is space, you might reach the arm back, and you might even bend your back knee. And just over holding here, if your foot is comfortably there and you can take hold of it, then you might add this little quad stretch. But be really mindful, if your body doesn't want to go there, it's not going to go well.
So listening to what your body wants to do today. Beautiful. And then releasing from there, bringing your back foot down, walking your right foot in a little more. Tuck your back toes for a moment. Keep your left hand down again and then reach your right arm up. And now take this high crescent twist, pressing up to that back heel and no more releasing the back knee for a moment, adding the twist. Really reach up to this top hand, lengthen. You might even like a little lean back. Beautiful. Hand comes down and then transitioning back to your tabletop position. And a moment to sink back into child's pose. And then walk your hands towards your knees, sitting up on your knees, open your arms out, cactus arms. Beautiful. Take your right elbow underneath your left. So your eagle arms here. Now you might bring right arm underneath left and then just give yourself like a little hug. You might even prefer just to bring your forearms together, or eagle arm variation where you bring your right elbow underneath the left and then maybe your hands are just here beside each other, or you cross them over and your palms connect. Really depending on your anatomy a lot of the time and the kind of length of your arms. So drawing the shoulders down and away from the ears, arms away. Just taking 3 full focus breaths here. That active squeeze at the same time, keep length up your lower back. Beautiful. Release the arms, take the hands behind you, interlace the fingers, open across the chest. Hands a shake. Back to your tabletop position. And we'll start with that, stepping the left foot forward. So left hand can come in slightly. Over that knee, step the foot. Think about how lightly you can do this. Just be interested, be curious. And then a little bit of movement forward and back. That left foot doesn't have to be crazy out to the side, just where it lands for you. And then we'll step it back. So how lightly can you float the foot and bring it back? And even maybe a little movement here, up and forward and back, or cat-cow. And then again, float that knee, smooth transition of thing out to the side, like it as creative as you like. Maybe you step the foot a little further forward. You might even let the hands come further forward and explore that movement, rocking forward and back. Pressing down, sweeping back. Once again, and this time we'll step forward for our lizard lunge. So you can make any adjustments as you come forward. I'm going to bring my foot more onto the mat. And maybe you adjust your back knee. And then your option either to come down to the floor or to bring those blocks in. And we'll rest in lizard lunge. You get those back toes tucked or the foot flat. Again, any little movement if it's feeling rather interesting. Three more breaths here. And then coming up, blocks out to the side. Okay, right hand down this time. You can shift it forward slightly, sinking in. We take the twist. Left arm reaches, initially with the back knee down. Now, option to hold right here, or just reach the arm back. Okay, you can really modify how far you take this. Or you might be in the back knee and still just be here and reaching, keep it active. If your foot's there, it feels good. You can still breathe and maintain the integrity in what you're doing. You might take hold of the foot, sink forward. And just 2 full breaths. And then gently release. We'll lift it up to our crescent. So now toe heel that left foot in a little more. Tuck your back toes, lifting up. And then again, left arm rises. You're still in that variation of twist. Pressing out through that back foot, kind of squeezing in. Really keep your focused attention on what you're doing, how you can lengthen and add more awareness and activity to your shape. Beautiful. Top hand comes down, back knee comes down, and that easeful transition, stepping back to your tabletop. A moment of sitting into child's pose. And then walking your hands in towards your knees. You're sitting up on the heels. You can always tuck the toes for a little bonus. Open out cactus arms. Left elbow underneath the right. Left arm under the right. So again, take your variation. You're going for your eagle arms, palms together. You might be giving yourself that little squeeze, or just elbows or palms together. And as you're here, squeeze the arms. You draw shoulders out of the ears. And then it's like you're pulling your arms away from you. And notice how that maybe changes the sensation, what you experience in the shoulders and the chest, the upper arms. Notice you're not collapsing in your seat here, lifting out of the lower back. 2 full breaths. Beautiful. Release, bring the hands behind you, interlace the fingers, and open across the chest. Beautiful. Give that a little shake out. Okay, so your blanket, you might like to use it if you do have quite tight hips here, where we're about to go to sit on. Not 100% necessary. Okay. And then just making your way over into a seat. Bring your legs out in front. So taking your right leg, or your right knee, or a leg, just make sure you remember which one you're doing first. I'm not worrying. And you want to take your right knee on top of your left. So I've actually got the right leg of the foot pressing into the floor. Now, if your legs don't do this shape, then take your right ankle onto the knee like this, okay? And it doesn't matter if it doesn't work for you. It's better not to put too much strain to the body and the hips. And if you're using the blanket, you just want to prop your hips up so you can kind of ground down through your sit bones. Now, you can also keep your bottom leg, your left leg extended long, toes drawing back. And this is going to be your seat, especially if you've got a lot of sensation going on right here. So you can let it to lengthen, and we will start to fold forward. You might even like this variation, even if you can go further, because you feel it into the back of the legs. You can kind of test it out here first with the leg extended. Would you like to stay here for this variation? Or you might prefer to bend the bottom leg, that left leg, so the knees are stacked on top. Again, remembering, even if you can do this, you might prefer the other variation. It's not that one is kind of the road to the other one, but just seeing how you go, and then starting to come forward. Now, what can happen here is when you come forward, you sort of lift your butt up off the ground. And to really be in the idea of the shape, as it is from a yogic lens, you're pressing the sit bones down. So try and keep the buttocks on the floor, and then lengthening out the lower back as you tilt forward and come over the legs. Lengthening through the crown of the head. If tilting forward is just like way not going to happen, then you start here. If you've got sensation, stay here and breathe. Like to keep the hands kind of resting on the knees. You find that pressing down, lengthening up still to the crown of the head, and then just breathing into whatever's going on around here. Of course, if it gets too much, you can step that bottom leg or just come out of it for a moment. But just pausing here, and we'll be in the shape for about 5 full breaths. Beautiful. Then gently starting to, just as and when you feel ready, start to come back up. Bring the hands back. You might use your hands to kind of get your legs out of the shake.
Bring the legs out. You might give them a little shake or bending the knees. It can be nice to allow the knees to move from side to side once again. And we'll just change to the other side. So this time I've got my right leg extended long, and I'm going to bring that left knee across first. Okay, so facing the foot, I'm really looking to try and squeeze the inner thighs to keep that hugging in towards the center so the legs stay there. If you've got the knees stacked, again, modifying as you need to with the ankle. Don't have to come all the way over. You can use props to support those knees. They don't want too much vulnerability. And then test it out with that bottom leg straight. So lift and lengthen. If you're here and you're like, that's good for me, stay here. Otherwise, you might come forward and be like, oh, I get an interesting sensation through the calf or the hamstring. You might want to sit with that and go for it. And then if and when you feel ready, you can bend that bottom leg. Sometimes I like to press down through the feet, kind of lift out and squeeze it. So I get this real squeezing in of the legs to feel the shape basically. And then maybe either coming forward or standing upright, and we'll settle here for that sort of 5-ish round breaths. Take one more breath here. Coming up when you're ready. Again, you can use the hands to release the legs. Bringing them out, you might shake them out in front, or just find this little crosses from side to side. Or maybe a little bit of both. I quite like that. Cool. Okay. Now this specific forward fold, I quite like having the blanket to sit on. It's got a little tilt, so you might like to bring them, you don't have to. Take your right leg out once again, and then bending your left knee, you're going to place your left foot on the floor. So you're sitting like this. Now, if there's not much flexibility in space going on, walk your left foot forward more and even maybe out wider, right? We're just going to lift from here. And then you're really working, if there's no sort of forward action, of just having the fingertips beside you to hold and strengthen all of these muscles in the spine to hold yourself upright at the same time as activating this right leg. So pressing out through the foot, and you can use the left foot to kind of press down and balance out the pelvis. If there's a little more space, bring this foot in closer. So I've kind of got my foot halfway between my pelvis and my knee, or my hips and my knee here. And then lift and lengthen, and again, you can stay right here, or if there's more space, I'm going to start to take a forward fold. This we might walk the foot out a little bit more. Over the right leg. So now I'm taking my left arm to the inside line, and I start to walk forward. Okay, you might just be holding right here. Now, even though I've got my left arm on the inside, I'm kind of squeezing my knee back in, so I don't just want it to drop out to the side. And if you're like, I've got more space, and please, really listen to your body here. But you might like to take, so watch my left arm comes around. You might just be here, or my right arm comes out as well, and maybe there's a bind. Maybe. And then you can come down further. That's pretty weird forward fold. You could use a strap, or you could just be reaching. You don't actually have to grab hold. Forcing a bind is never going to do your body any good, you know, depending on the length of your arms, really. So pausing either here or any of the other variations. Again, you might just be right here and working on your legs being in this shape and allowing yourself to sit up before there's any tilt forward, okay? And take 3 full breaths. Inhale, reaching up as you're ready. Take those arms behind you. Reverse. And switch, change the legs. So left leg out long, bend your right knee. And just notice if it's in, I like to bring it out a little bit if I'm going to take the bind. You can always take that foot forward more and just stay upright, explore where it is today, especially if it's your first time doing this shape. Keep drawing those left toes back so this bottom leg stays nice and active. Lifting, you might be here. You might start to bring this right arm to the inside of the right leg and then come forward like that and keep squeezing at the end, fold. Then kind of walk towards the foot like that. Or your option, right arm comes around. Maybe the left arm, maybe you're just reaching for the hand, maybe you take the bind and then coming over that leg. Okay, so many options. It's all about not forcing, it's being able to actually listen to your body and kind of avoiding sometimes where the mind wants to take us to create harmony in our system by listening to our system, listening to our body. Two more full breaths here. And gently release, bring those hands back, reverse the action of the chest. You take both legs out in front now, and really open and reverse your chest after that forward folding. One. Okay, and then we'll come down once again onto the back. We'll finish with waterfall pose or supported bridge. If you prefer neither of those, you might just like Shavasana for one, or wriggle over to a wall and shaping your legs up the wall, or you can just lift your legs up on the floor. You don't have to bring any props underneath. Okay? If you're coming with me and you do have props, then I've got one block. If you've got like a bolster or a cushion, it can be a little bit more restorative, or it's bringing a blanket over your block. And then sliding in the props once you're down, making sure that it is more on the sacrum. So that's why having cushions is really nice, because it's not like one point. You're definitely going to feel a sense of comfort, hopefully. And then from here, option to bring those legs up, just letting everything come down, and maybe the arms up as well. So taking your time to set up for your shape. And then going into the conscious control of your breath. And with a sense of just finding some balance and letting go. Taking 3 more breaths where you are. Just as and when you're ready, making your way down, really taking your time, make it yours, across those props, and just any final movements that feel appropriate for you to seal off the practice. And of course, as you make your way into Shavasana, any Shavasana shape that suits you. So it might be lying on your back, away from the body, legs out wide, or any props, or you might like the blanket over the body. You might prefer lying on the side, or even coming up towards a seated position to close. So whatever feels best for you for just these last few moments of Shavasana. Softening your breath and just starting to feel the weight of the body into the floor. If you have more time today to stay in Shavasana, I very much encourage you to do so. Otherwise, if you're with me, starting to invite a little movement through fingers and toes. Stretching the arms, the legs. And just making your way to one side or to a seated position to close the practice. Wherever you are, you might like to close with a round of breath, breathing in through the nose. And out the mouth. Thank you for joining me, for practicing. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And namaste.